The city street was alive with the usual evening chaos: honking horns, chatter from passing pedestrians, and the distant wail of sirens. Amid this everyday rhythm, an officer patrolled on foot, her K9 companion walking loyally beside her. The dog, a strong and disciplined German shepherd, mirrored her every step, eyes sharp, ears perked, alert to any hint of trouble. The officer adjusted her uniform slightly, scanning the crowd with practiced vigilance, unaware that a storm was about to erupt just a few meters away. Suddenly, a young man stepped out from the shadows of a nearby alley, his expensive clothes and flashy demeanor betraying his identity, the son of a notorious Mafia figure. His eyes glinted with arrogance and a sense of untouchable power. Without warning, he lunged at the officer, shoving her forcefully. The K9 reacted instantly, barking and bristling, attempting to protect its handler. The Mafia son, fueled by entitlement and aggression, kicked at the dog with a reckless, malicious swing, sending it yelping across the sidewalk. Passers-by froze, their conversations halting mid-sentence as the scene escalated from a tense encounter to outright violence. The officer regained her balance, shouting at the man to stop, but the assault continued. Her K9, recovering quickly, circled protectively, growling low, ready to defend her at a moment's notice. Fear surged through the officer's chest, not for herself but for her loyal partner, the dog she had trained and trusted implicitly. Every second felt like an eternity as the Mafia son raised his fist again, prepared to strike. The bustling street, once ordinary and mundane, now held its breath in anticipation of what would happen next. From the edge of the crowd, a tall, imposing figure emerged quietly, eyes scanning the chaos with trained precision. A Navy SEAL off-duty and casually observing the street had witnessed the sudden outbreak of violence. His gaze locked onto the Mafia son, cataloging every motion, every micro-expression, and every potential threat. At his side, a massive German shepherd mirrored his focus, muscles coiled, eyes sharp. Every instinct in the SEAL told him that intervention was required, but it would have to be precise, controlled, and effective. The Mafia son, oblivious to the presence of the SEAL, continued his assault, shoving the officer and kicking at the K9. Each blow he delivered only heightened the tension, and the officer struggled to maintain a protective posture over her dog. Pedestrians stepped back, unsure whether to intervene or flee, their eyes wide with a mix of fear and disbelief. The street, usually mundane and noisy, had transformed into a stage for chaos, aggression, and impending reckoning. The SEAL moved deliberately toward the scene, his steps measured, projecting calm authority without aggression. The larger German shepherd mirrored him perfectly, coiled and ready, a living extension of his protective presence. The Mafia son, still engrossed in his attack, failed to notice the shift in energy as the SEAL approached, his calm but commanding presence beginning to dominate the street. The officer, sensing a change in the tension, glanced up, her eyes meeting the focused, unwavering gaze of the SEAL. Relief flickered briefly across her face, though fear still gripped her heart. With a subtle adjustment, the SEAL positioned himself between the aggressor and the officer, creating a protective perimeter without a word. His German shepherd mirrored each movement, coiled like a spring, eyes locked on the Mafia son, radiating controlled power and authority. The K9 at the officer's side instinctively sensed the reinforcement, barking softly yet confidently, reassured by the combined presence of disciplined protectors. Pedestrians watched silently, captivated by the precise control, the calm dominance, and the subtle authority that had begun to shift the balance of power. The SEAL's voice cut through the charged air, calm and unwavering. "Step back, now!" The words carried weight, commanding attention without shouting. The Mafia son froze mid-motion, eyes widening in shock at the sudden, undeniable authority confronting him. The German shepherd growled low, restrained but potent, signaling that further aggression would be met instantly and decisively. The officer tightened her hold on her K9, sensing that the protective shield had solidified, her fear slowly giving way to cautious confidence. The SEAL's eyes swept the scene with trained precision, taking in every subtle detail: the Mafia son's posture, the officer's defensive positioning, and the surrounding environment that could influence the outcome. His mind calculated multiple scenarios in a heartbeat, weighing every possibility to neutralize the threat while keeping the officer and her K9 completely safe. At his side, the massive German shepherd mirrored his focus, muscles coiled and ready, eyes locked on the aggressor with unflinching attention. Every movement was controlled, deliberate, and filled with quiet authority. The Mafia son, initially blinded by arrogance and aggression, faltered as he noticed the calm but commanding presence approaching. His fists, once raised with reckless confidence, now trembled slightly. He attempted to step forward, trying to assert dominance, but the unyielding stance of the SEAL and the silent, coiled power of the German shepherd made him pause. For the first time, he felt uncertainty, a rare crack in the armor of entitlement that had guided his actions. Every instinct screamed that this was no ordinary confrontation. He was facing someone whose skill and moral authority far exceeded anything he had encountered. The officer pressed closer to her K9, shielding the dog instinctively. The German Shepherd, sensing reinforcement, mirrored the SEAL's disciplined stance, bristling and growling softly yet restrained. The Mafia son took a tentative step backward, his aggression giving way to confusion and hesitation. Passers-by froze, their attention fixed on the unfolding scene, recognizing the tension that had shifted dramatically. What had started as an assault fueled by arrogance was now a standoff dominated by skill, discipline, and moral authority. The SEAL spoke again, calm and measured. "Step back, this ends now." His tone left no room for negotiation or defiance. The German Shepherd growled low, restrained yet unmistakable, reinforcing the invisible barrier that now separated the aggressor from his intended victim. The Mafia son's eyes widened, realizing that his previous tactics, intimidation, entitlement, and force, were powerless against the composed authority standing before him. The officer allowed herself a cautious glance at the SEAL, sensing the protective perimeter had solidified, her fear beginning to subside under the disciplined presence surrounding her. The SEAL subtly repositioned himself, guiding the officer and her K9 toward a safer line of sight while keeping the Mafia son at a controlled distance. Every micro-movement reinforced the protective barrier, leaving the aggressor with no openings. The German Shepherd mirrored each shift, muscles coiled and eyes sharp, ready to respond instantly if the Mafia son attempted to breach the perimeter. Pedestrians leaned forward, captivated by the precision and strategy on display, witnessing how calm authority neutralized a violent threat without a single unnecessary act of aggression. The Mafia son's hesitation deepened as he realized the futility of further attacks. His arrogance and sense of entitlement had been dismantled not through brute force, but through calculated presence, control, and unwavering moral authority. The officer felt a tentative relief as the immediate threat was contained, her K9 more confident and reassured by the combined protective presence. The SEAL's subtle movements guided the pair toward safety, every step precise, every glance ensuring that no sudden action could jeopardize the protective perimeter. Finally, the SEAL allowed a small nod toward a safer path, signaling the officer to move. She followed cautiously, her K9 at her side, both reassured by the unbroken shield of the SEAL and his German Shepherd. The Mafia son, subdued and fully aware of the authority confronting him, made no attempt to advance further. Patrons and passers-by exhaled quietly, awestruck by the mastery of controlled intervention, tactical precision, and moral authority that had neutralized a dangerous encounter while keeping the vulnerable safe. The SEAL's presence dominated the scene now, a living shield of calm authority. He adjusted his stance slightly, every micro-movement calculated to maintain the protective perimeter around the officer and her K9. The larger German Shepherd mirrored his every motion, muscles coiled, eyes fixed on the Mafia son with an unwavering focus that radiated both control and power. The officer, sensing the shift in dynamics, held her ground but allowed her posture to relax slightly, the K9 at her side now moving confidently, reassured by the disciplined protection surrounding them. The Mafia son's arrogance was eroding rapidly. His fists, once raised with reckless confidence, now hung limply at his sides as he assessed the disciplined figure before him. Each subtle movement from the SEAL and his dog communicated readiness, authority, and moral clarity, leaving no doubt that any attempt to escalate would be met instantly. Passers-by watched in tense silence, captivated by the transformation of the scene from violent aggression to controlled dominance, executed with precision and strategic calm. The SEAL's voice broke the tension, calm but undeniably firm. "You've done enough, step back, now." There was no shouting, no threat beyond the weight of authority in his tone. The German Shepherd at his side growled low and restrained, a living reinforcement of the boundary he had established. The Mafia son froze completely, recognizing for the first time that his previous methods of intimidation were powerless here. The officer allowed a small, cautious exhale, her confidence bolstered by the solid protective barrier surrounding her. Subtle shifts in the SEAL's stance guided the officer and her K9 toward a slightly safer angle on the street, maintaining a clear line of retreat while keeping the Mafia son at a controlled distance. The larger German Shepherd mirrored each movement flawlessly, projecting calm readiness that left no room for miscalculation. The small K9, sensing the protective presence, moved closer to its handler, reassured by the unwavering control exhibited by the SEAL and his companion. Every micro-movement was part of a precise choreography designed to neutralize threat without unnecessary violence. The Mafia son's hesitation deepened with each passing moment. The reality of his vulnerability, once inconceivable in his world of power and privilege, became undeniable. His fists unclenched entirely, shoulders sagging slightly, eyes flicking nervously between the officer, her K9, and the disciplined duo guarding them. Patrons and onlookers absorbed the display of tactical mastery, recognizing how calm authority, strategic positioning, and moral clarity could dismantle aggression more effectively than brute force. Finally, the SEAL allowed the officer a subtle nod, signaling a cautious movement toward a safer section of the street. She followed, her K9 at her side, both reassured by the unbroken protective shield. The Mafia son, fully subdued and aware of the authority confronting him, made no attempt to interfere further. Passers-by exhaled quietly, the tension slowly dissolving as the controlled intervention ensured safety, justice, and the preservation of dignity. The officer glanced briefly at the SEAL, a silent message of gratitude passing between them. The larger German Shepherd maintained its coiled vigilance, eyes never leaving the Mafia son, muscles taut yet controlled. The small K9, previously threatened, relaxed slightly, wagging its tail in quiet relief. What had begun as a chaotic and violent encounter had now been neutralized entirely through precision, discipline, and moral authority, a masterful demonstration of protective intervention that left the aggressor powerless and the vulnerable unharmed. The SEAL maintained his steady, unyielding stance, every movement purposeful, each micro-adjustment reinforcing the protective perimeter around the officer and her K9. The massive German Shepherd mirrored him perfectly, coiled and alert, projecting silent authority that left the Mafia son frozen in place. The small K9 pressed closer to its handler, reassured by the disciplined presence of the larger dog and the calm dominance radiating from the SEAL. Pedestrians on the street paused, captivated by the quiet, precise control that had transformed a chaotic attack into a scene of measured authority. The Mafia son's confidence had vanished entirely. The arrogance and entitlement that had fueled his initial aggression crumbled as he realized he was no longer in control. Every glance from the SEAL, every subtle coiling of the German Shepherd's muscles, communicated the consequences of even the slightest defiance. His fists fell completely to his sides, and a flicker of fear crossed his eyes, a rare vulnerability in someone accustomed to power. The officer's posture relaxed slightly, the tension in her body easing as she felt the protective barrier solidify around her and her dog. The SEAL's voice, calm yet commanding, cut through the tension. "You've done enough, step back now, no more aggression." The words resonated with authority beyond volume. They carried experience, precision, and moral clarity. The German Shepherd growled low, restrained but unmistakably clear, reinforcing the boundary without further confrontation. The Mafia son's eyes widened, understanding fully for the first time that his entitlement and violence held no power against the disciplined presence confronting him. The SEAL subtly shifted his stance, guiding the officer and her K9 toward a safer path, all while keeping the aggressor at a controlled distance. Each micro-movement reinforced control and minimized risk. The larger German Shepherd mirrored him perfectly, muscles taut yet composed, radiating readiness without unnecessary aggression. The small K9, previously threatened, now trotted close to its handler, reassured and gaining confidence from the disciplined presence of the protective duo. Patrons and onlookers watched in awe, noting how calm authority neutralized aggression with precision and moral weight. The Mafia son's hesitation deepened with every passing second. His arrogance had been stripped away entirely, replaced with confusion, fear, and reluctant comprehension of the consequences of his actions. Every subtle adjustment by the SEAL, every shift in the German Shepherd's stance, communicated control and dominance without a single violent act. The officer's breathing became steadier, her K9 more relaxed, both sensing that the threat had been contained and that the situation was under expert control. Finally, the SEAL allowed a small nod toward a clear path for the officer and her K9. She moved cautiously, her dog following closely, reassured by the protective shield that remained intact. The Mafia son, subdued and fully aware of the authority before him, made no further attempts at aggression. Passers-by exhaled quietly, tension dissolving as the precise, controlled intervention restored order and safety. The officer glanced at the SEAL with a mix of gratitude and relief, while the larger German Shepherd remained vigilant, ready but composed. The scene, once dominated by chaos and aggression, had been transformed into a controlled display of skill, moral authority, and protective mastery. The small K9 wagged its tail tentatively, sensing the end of immediate danger. Patrons on the street reflected on what they had witnessed, a masterful lesson in tactical precision, discipline, and the power of calm, authoritative presence to protect the vulnerable and neutralize violence. The tension in the street began to shift, a tangible change in the atmosphere as the SEAL maintained his precise, commanding presence. Every step, every subtle adjustment of his stance, reinforced the protective barrier around the officer and her K9. The massive German Shepherd mirrored him flawlessly, muscles coiled and eyes sharp, projecting authority that required no additional force. The small K9 trotted close to its handler, now reassured by the disciplined presence surrounding it. Passers-by slowed, captivated by the controlled intervention, recognizing that what had begun as chaos was being resolved with skill and moral clarity. The Mafia son's posture sagged, a mixture of disbelief, fear, and reluctant understanding crossing his face. His fists, once raised with reckless aggression, now hung limply at his sides. He had relied on intimidation, privilege, and force, but none of it mattered against the calm authority confronting him. Every glance from the SEAL and the German Shepherd reinforced the futility of defiance, leaving him powerless and exposed. Patrons on the street whispered among themselves, awed by the display of control and tactical mastery, seeing firsthand how calm, precise authority could dismantle aggression without unnecessary violence. The SEAL's voice, low and unwavering, cut through the silence. "Step back, you've done enough, no more attacks." The words carried moral weight and professional authority, leaving no room for negotiation. The German Shepherd growled softly, restrained yet potent, reinforcing the invisible barrier and signaling that any attempt to cross it would be met instantly. The officer, sensing the protective perimeter's strength, allowed herself to relax slightly, the tension in her muscles easing as her K9 gained confidence from the support surrounding them. With subtle, deliberate movements, the SEAL guided the officer and her K9 toward a safer section of the street. Each adjustment reinforced control, minimizing risk and keeping the aggressor at a safe distance. The larger German Shepherd mirrored each motion perfectly, radiating readiness without unnecessary aggression. The small K9, reassured, trotted closer to its handler, tail wagging tentatively, sensing the immediate threat had passed. The patrons, still watching silently, understood the delicate balance of power and protection being maintained, a masterful display of tactical skill and moral authority. The Mafia son's hesitation grew into full realization. He comprehended the full extent of his vulnerability, stripped of the arrogance and entitlement that had driven his actions. Every glance from the SEAL, every subtle adjustment from the German Shepherd communicated dominance and readiness. The officer's breathing became steadier, her K9 more confident, both drawing courage from the protective presence surrounding them. The SEAL's calculated guidance ensured their movement toward safety was seamless and secure. Finally, the SEAL allowed a small nod, signaling the officer to continue toward a safer point down the street. She moved cautiously, K9 at her side, reassured by the unbroken protective shield. The Mafia son, fully subdued and aware of the authority confronting him, made no attempt to resist or challenge further. Passers-by exhaled collectively, the street's tension finally beginning to dissolve as control, discipline, and moral authority triumphed over aggression. The officer glanced at the SEAL, gratitude and relief reflected in her eyes, while the massive German Shepherd remained vigilant yet composed. The scene, once defined by violence and chaos, had been transformed into a living lesson in tactical precision, protective mastery, and moral authority. The small K9 wagged its tail cautiously, sensing safety, while the public witnessed the quiet but undeniable power of disciplined intervention. What had begun as a violent encounter was now a testament to the effectiveness of calm, controlled authority in shielding the vulnerable and restoring order. The SEAL's presence remained unyielding, every movement deliberate, every glance precise. He positioned himself slightly forward, creating a protective barrier between the officer, her K9, and the now subdued Mafia son. The massive German Shepherd mirrored each subtle shift, coiled and alert, eyes locked on the aggressor with a calm intensity that left no doubt. Any attempt to escalate would be met instantly. The small K9 trotted close to its handler, reassured by the combined presence of disciplined protectors, sensing the tension in the air had begun to shift toward resolution. The Mafia son's earlier bravado had completely dissolved, his fists hung limply at his sides. Shoulders slumped, and his eyes darted nervously between the SEAL, the German Shepherd, and the officer. For the first time he fully realized the consequences of his aggression. The entitlement and arrogance that had fueled his attack were powerless in the face of calm authority, discipline, and experience. Patrons on the street whispered among themselves, captivated by the transformation of the encounter, witnessing skill and moral authority neutralize violence without unnecessary force. The SEAL's voice, low, calm, and commanding, cut through the charged silence. "Step back, you've done enough, this ends now." The words resonated with absolute authority, leaving the Mafia son with no room to challenge or resist. The German Shepherd growled softly, restrained but unmistakable, reinforcing the protective barrier and warning that any further aggression would be met instantly. The officer, now more relaxed, allowed her K9 to move freely at her side, both reassured by the unwavering presence of their protector. With subtle adjustments, the SEAL guided the officer and her K9 toward a safer point on the street. Every micro-movement reinforced control, maintained safety, and left the Mafia son fully contained. The massive German Shepherd mirrored each adjustment flawlessly, muscles taut yet composed, radiating readiness without unnecessary aggression. The small K9, reassured, stayed close to its handler, tail wagging cautiously. The patrons, still captivated, witnessed a masterful demonstration of tactical skill, control, and moral authority that neutralized aggression without resorting to violence. The Mafia son's hesitation deepened into complete awareness of his vulnerability. His arrogance had been stripped away entirely, replaced by fear, shame, and reluctant recognition of the authority confronting him. Every glance from the SEAL and the German Shepherd communicated dominance and control, leaving him powerless to act. The officer's breathing steadied, her K9 gaining confidence, as the SEAL maintained precise control over the unfolding situation. Each micro-movement, every subtle adjustment, ensured that no sudden action could jeopardize the protective perimeter. Finally, the SEAL allowed a small nod, signaling the officer to proceed toward complete safety. She moved cautiously, her K9 at her side, reassured by the unbroken protective shield. The Mafia son, fully subdued and aware of the consequences, made no attempt to resist or advance further. The tension in the street dissolved as control, discipline, and moral authority triumphed over chaos and aggression. Patrons exhaled quietly, awestruck by the effectiveness of calm, precise intervention. The scene, once dominated by violence and fear, now radiated safety, moral authority, and control. The small K9 wagged its tail, sensing relief and security. The SEAL and his German Shepherd stood as a silent testament to the power of disciplined presence, tactical precision, and moral clarity in protecting the vulnerable and neutralizing threats without unnecessary force. The street, once a chaotic scene of aggression and fear, now held a tense calm. The officer, still catching her breath, stood within the protective shadow of the Navy SEAL. Her small K9, previously threatened by violence, nestled close to the massive German Shepherd at the SEAL's side, finally feeling the security it had been denied moments ago. The larger dog remained vigilant, muscles coiled yet controlled, eyes never leaving the subdued Mafia son, ready to respond instantly if needed. The city around them continued its rhythm, but for those witnessing the event, time seemed to stretch, the lesson unfolding in every measured movement and gaze. The Mafia son, his arrogance and entitlement completely stripped away, stood frozen. His fists hung limply, his posture slumped, and his eyes reflected disbelief and fear. He had relied on power, privilege, and aggression, but none of it mattered here. The SEAL's calm authority, combined with the disciplined presence of his German Shepherd, had neutralized every attempt at intimidation. The officer glanced at the SEAL, a flicker of relief and gratitude in her eyes, her small K9 brushing against her legs, reassured and safe. The SEAL's voice, low and commanding, cut through the lingering tension. "This ends now, leave them alone." The words carried a weight beyond authority, a moral clarity that left no room for defiance. The German Shepherd growled softly, restrained but potent, reinforcing the invisible barrier that had protected the officer and her companion. The Mafia son's eyes widened further, recognizing fully the futility of any further action. The crowd of onlookers exhaled quietly, captivated by the display of precision, discipline, and protective authority. With subtle, deliberate steps, the SEAL guided the officer and her K9 toward a safer point, ensuring the path remained clear and the Mafia son contained at a distance. The larger German Shepherd mirrored each movement flawlessly, radiating calm readiness, while the small K9 followed closely, reassured by the presence of its protector. Patrons on the street watched in awe, understanding they had witnessed a rare demonstration of tactical skill and moral authority neutralizing aggression without unnecessary violence. The officer allowed herself a full, genuine exhale, relief flooding through her body. Her small K9 wagged its tail cautiously, sensing the end of immediate danger. The SEAL and his German Shepherd paused briefly, ensuring the Mafia son posed no further threat. The street, once tense and chaotic, now radiated calm, safety, and moral clarity. Patrons whispered among themselves, reflecting on the masterful control and protective intervention they had just witnessed. Finally, the SEAL and his German Shepherd turned and walked away down the quiet street, leaving behind a lesson in discipline, skill, and unwavering moral authority. The Mafia son, subdued and humbled, could do nothing but watch. The officer, now fully within a safe perimeter, sank slightly into her stance, her heart steadying, her spirit lighter, knowing that experience, courage, and precise intervention had shielded her and her K9 from harm. The small dog barked once, a joyful, relieved sound, echoing the end of a terrifying ordeal. The street returned to its normal rhythm, but the memory of the event lingered. Every witness would remember how calm authority, tactical mastery, and moral clarity had transformed a dangerous confrontation into a controlled resolution. True strength, they realized, was measured not by aggression or entitlement, but by the ability to protect the vulnerable, act decisively, and restore justice with precision and unwavering courage. And on that city street, the officer and her K9 walked away, finally safe, forever changed by the intervention of a Navy SEAL and his loyal German shepherd.